If you haven't watched my review of the original 1996 Resident Evil, then I suggest you do so before watching, considering I covered most of the game and what it has to offer. Before jumping right into Resident Evil 2, I didn't want to miss out on Resident Evil history without talking about the director's cut of the game, and also the time period. Let's begin. After the huge success of the first title, Capcom tried to hurry and get out a sequel. Capcom was pretty much struggling to get Resident Evil 2 going as it became the infamous Resident Evil 1.5, and eventually was scrapped until they started over again. The actual build of 1.5 can be played today as it was actually released by a few people a couple of weeks ago. It's nothing special and is a piece of shit considering it has nothing to offer because it's someone else's vision of what they wanted it to be. It's just a desperate attempt to dig up something that should have just stayed dead. I understand we all get curious, but Capcom had little to offer before scrapping it. It was almost finished, more than halfway complete, but we only got so little information at video game conventions and magazines, and when it all came down to it, we got a much better game in return. That's all I have to say about the whole 1.5 thing. There is no reason for me to go on about that shit any longer. With Capcom restarting the development process, they wanted to hold us fans over until time was ready, so they released Resident Evil Director's Cut, which promised new modes, uncensored cutscenes, and more gore. The game would also include a demo of Resident Evil 2, that sold it on its own. Other than that, it's the same damn game, just with a few adjustments, and half of the things that were promised, we didn't even get. What we got in return was false advertising for the most part. The game was said to have the original uncensored opening cutscene that was in the Japanese release and the US PC version. Also, there was an uncensored shot of Kenneth's head falling off, which is also cut from the original. You can see the difference right here, as the intro is completely uncensored compared to the original, and it's in color. But of course, we got this, the same fucking opening with no changes to be found. Also, there is no head from Kenneth's corpse. In a nutshell, the game is still fucking censored. Why? Well, Capcom being fucking idiots comes to mind. This is where the controversy really begins with the release in general, considering fans would be playing it expecting what they were told. Apparently, Capcom made the mistake because of a localization mistake made by the developers. Fans were pissed and complained so much that they made the uncensored FMVs available on their website to watch. They know they fucked up big time. People would call Capcom or even Sony and ask what the hell was wrong and why things were not included in the game that were promised. Capcom would send free Resident Evil t-shirts and guidebooks in return because of this mistake. So what did we get with this release of the game a year and a half later than its original 1996 release? Well, we get two new modes, Advanced Mode and Training. Training is an easier way of playing. Enemies are weaker and more items are laid out for you. Advanced Mode is the most interesting because it has all of the items put in a different area than they were before, increasing the challenge for people who might have already mastered the game. This is the best thing to play because it has a bit more of a fresh approach to it instead of just going stale. The players also get new costumes, but who cares? The new handgun they give you gets headshots, and that's always fun. There's also new camera angles, and enemies are supposed to be smarter and faster and are placed more throughout the mansion as well. Other than that, it's the same damn thing as the original, and I covered most of that in my other review. The Resident Evil 2 demo was short and sweet, but it really got fans hyped for the game, which was good for a release like this. I don't think it was worth $39.99 like it was back in the day, considering we only got half of what they promised, but screw it. Now before we move on, we can't forget the second release of Director's Cut that came out after Resident Evil 2 was released. This time, it was under a greatest hits label and was standalone without the demo disc of Resident Evil 2. Now, what is different about this release? Well, you would think it would be the uncensored intros and FMVs that were promised before, and maybe something else in return. What we got was the same fucking release. Yep, that's right. Without wasting your time with explaining, Capcom made no effort to put the uncensored stuff in and were completely fucking lazy. It makes you wonder if they did it on purpose from the get-go to steal your money. It gets even worse. On this version of Director's Cut, the original soundtrack is fucking replaced with this shitty music that just takes away the experience and some of the scary atmosphere. So this release was another waste of space. The only thing it had going for it that the original Director's Cut didn't support was DualShock, but again, not worth buying it for the third fucking time. Unfortunately, this is the version that is now on the PSN. That's all there really is to say about the original releases of Resident Evil. There was a Saturn version released in August of 1997 before Director's Cut, but it was the same as the original and had an extra battle mode. There was also a DS version that was the same as well, and guess what? No uncut intro. We get Kenneth's head though. Happy? Me neither. What was next in the Resident Evil series? It was a game that we will never forget, as it was one of the biggest releases in the late 90s.